Hallelujah. Once again, Dr. UCHE ESEGBUE, the purpose doctor, today for some reasons that I will elucidate in today's presentation. I will declare a state of emergency on drug abuse. But let's look at this discourse titled A State of Emergency Against Drug Abuse in Nigeria. What is drug abuse? The use of drug that is not generally accepted on medical ground, or you can say any non-medical use of drugs, both drugs that have and those that do not have generally accepted medical value. Then what is addiction? It's a brain disease that is chronic and relapsing in nature. When you continue to abuse drugs, you get to a stage where the brain is changed and it becomes, becomes so used to the drugs that you are taking that it does not respond again. And if you proceed to increase the dose to get the same effect that you used to get before you know it, you keep on taking doses that become very dangerous to your health because the brain keep changing and changing and adapting until you get very trapped. So you must not get to that stage. Avoid drugs. Say no to drug abuse. I want to begin this discourse with the complications of drug abuse so you really appreciate what I'm talking about. Look at a patient I attended to, is a student. Look at the legs are swollen. This student was abusing codeine and has ended up with renal failure. There are so many cases, but let's briefly examine the complications of drug abuse. They are very. You see people with disrupted family life, you see divorces and separation, loss of job, loss of status, just everything become anyhow when people abuse drug. You see people that are disrupted in their academic career, exposure to crime and criminality, sudden death is even an outcome, and so on. The consequences are damning, and they are damning. We are seeing them all. There was a student that was on drug. He carried his friends on a vehicle, and they were all on drug, and they were speeding on campus. They crashed, caused an accident. So many complications that result from drug abuse. Look at this very well. You see 67%. Look at, you see 18%. Look at this 12.9 million. Look at it very well. You see the pictures that connote what is going on in our society right now. That is an intravenous drug abuser. These are powder that people sniff. Look at this picture. I think it's the same patient. These two patients, it's a case of chronic drug injection, was just injecting himself, injecting. So look at what has happened to all the limbs. Look at it very well. These are complications of drug abuse. This patient presented with very terrible complications because he was injecting himself. Look at the area he has been injecting. He has necrosed everywhere up to the extent that the bones became fractured. This is what we call pathological fracture of the radius and all now, resulting from chronic pentazocine abuse. He may have had reasons why he had pain. He was injecting himself with pentazocine. He just keep doing until he got to this stage. He could not stop because the brain morphology has been changed and deeply altered that he could no longer stop himself from taking the drug. So that is the outcome. But you also begin to know that drug overdose death is at all time high. Drug overdose deaths are common, very common right now, and is peaking. Therefore, we begin to regard drug abuse as an emerging global public health issue. Now look at it. Look at it. The recent World Drug Report in 2019 of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, estimated that 271 million, which represent 5.5% of the global population, aged between 5 and 54 years had used drugs in the previous year. We are looking at the burden of drug abuse. A study in 2017 estimated that there were 585,000 deaths due to drug use globally. The burden of drug abuse, the usage, the abuse, and the trafficking has been related to the four areas of international concern, which are organized crime, illicit financial flows, corruption, and terrorism or insurgency. But let's look at the burden in Nigeria, drug abuse burden in Nigeria, because the literatures are suggesting that the burden of drug abuse may continue to rise in Nigeria due to the involvement of politics and law enforcement and lack of political goodwill. We know what happens in Nigeria. We know the outlets where people get the drugs, and we know that the police even raid them and arrest them. But what do you come to see? Somebody can be arrested for selling drugs without doctor's prescription. And what happens? The next day, the person has paid his way and is back, is never persecuted. That's the situation in Nigeria. The high rates of drug abuse among the younger persons will reflect the easy accessibility of these drugs, peer group influence, and possibly lack of counseling programs in secondary schools and university. They are part of the burden that we are facing. Briefly, let's look at the prevalence of drug abuse in Nigeria, having looked at it globally. But Nigeria, which is the most populous country in Africa, has developed a reputation as a center for drug trafficking and usage, mostly among the youth population. So, according to the 2018 UNODC report, drug use in Nigeria, the first large-scale nationwide national drug use survey in Nigeria, 1 in 7 persons aged 15 to 64 years had used a drug in the past year. Can you compare at the prevalence in Nigeria? Also, 1 in 5 individuals who had used drugs in the past year is suffering from drug-related disorder. Drug abuse was common among undergraduate and secondary students, youth, commercial bus drivers, farmers, and sex workers. But right now, it's also found among secondary pupils in Nigeria. An Emma in Katsina State lamented. He said, 74 cases of drug abuses reported to my palace in 1 week. The NDLEA, National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, made this statement. 14.3 million Nigerians are involved in drug abuse. These are figures that we are seeing. But look at this. Illicit drug addiction has deeply permeated Nigerian society, so much so that young people of 15 years old and below are now having narcotic drugs for our youth who call themselves the leaders of tomorrow and consequently put the future of this great nation in jeopardy. Drug abuse has been a cause of many criminal offenses such as theft, burglary, sex work, and shoplifting. It is the fuel. Every criminal activity you are seeing in this country is drug related. These people go on drugs to commit crime, and drug has been fueling all this crime. If you want drug or criminal activity to reduce in Nigeria, we must take drug out of the picture. So why do people abuse drugs? Some say it's to increase their physical performance, some just to derive pleasure, some desire to relax or sleep, some want to keep awake, some are just experimenting, others are sheer curiosity, to relieve stress, to relieve anxiety. Some say it's unemployment, but the major problem because there is easy access, just too easy to get drug in Nigeria. But the poor socioeconomic factors and low educational background are the most common risk factors. Some of the drugs that are easily abused in Nigeria include codeine containing cough syrups. Alcohol is just abused anyhow. Tobacco, forget it. Then we have scotches. It's a cocktail of alcohol and amphetamine. Cannabis tea and amphetamine, or flavored drinks that contain opioids. Tramadol is just abused anyhow. Methadone, dextromethorphan, they are all abused. Fentanyl, amphetamines, and all benzodiazepines. The cannabis, the cocaine, and tramadol are the commonest. So at this juncture, I must give a very, very important warning because we have headed dangerously in the issue of drug abuse. But beware of heroin. And unfortunately, I must also let you know that heroin has found its way into the society. I have seen one heroin abuser in Abraka, and when questioned, he disclosed that he got it from Warri. And what you must know about heroin is that it's a very addictive drug. If you test it once, forget it, you must be addicted. So it's a warning. If you go about taking drugs, you will never know when you will be hooked with heroin, and you will find it very difficult to escape it. So be warned today. Be warned. There is heroin in our environment. It's also available, and it's coming very fast because the prevalence that is skyrocketing will drag it before you know it. Our youths are finished. They are finished. But God will help us. We continue to pray in this drug-free club. We'll continue to create awareness and raise our advocacy to ensure that there is a reversal of the trend. Cannabis is widely abused in Nigeria. Cannabis. But look at the street names of all the drugs. Cannabis, we know Igbo. Every Nigerian know Igbo, but it is in their hand. You can call it skunk, SK, so many names, Arizona, Kasok, so many names. And they know them by these street names. What of Scotch is a cocktail of drugs derived from alcohol and some orange juices. What of codeine? They can call it coda. They can call it slow. Tramadol is a trams or whatever. Codeine is what is called a slow angel, and they have given it all sorts of names just to make sure they are talking about it in your presence if you are not aware. But now it's even a common knowledge. We all know these things already. Even primary school pupils already know, to show you how bad the situation has gotten to. Now, the trend going on in Nigeria, you must be aware of food served at ceremonies. Most times they are laced heavily with drugs. If you miss your way and you think you are just going to a party, you just end up consuming large dose of drugs. So be warned, be warned. Shisha parties are even openly displayed and organized in Nigeria with banners that will even invite the general public. It's a shame. It's a shame. It's a dangerous trend. Look at, trends are going on dangerously. Why? So far, government at all levels, and particularly the federal government, are continuing to pay lip service to the war against illicit drug abuse. The NDLEA remains a toothless bulldog. The implication of this is that while narcotic drug abuse progresses at a geometric progression, the war against it progresses at an arithmetic progression. Nigeria is a failed state. Where are they getting all the drugs from? The sources where drug abusers obtain drug. Common sources include every pharmacy, every chemist out there, all drug retail outlets are involved. Patent medicine shops, open markets, they sell drug. There are drug hawkers on the street, hawkers of traditional or HEPA preparation, fellow drug abusers, underground agents, family and friends, teachers, physicians. Nobody is free. These things, check very well. Look, you will see the most trusted people are busy doing this thing, destroying our Nigeria. Nigeria is a failed state. The National Agency of Foods and Drugs Administration and Control, NAFDAC, an agency of the federal government of Nigeria, banned the manufacturing, importation, and sale without a valid prescription of codeine and codeine-containing syrups in Nigeria. This is a fallacy. It's a mere paperwork. They just ban it, but in practice, it's not implemented. It's not true. Woe to NAFDAC. Nigeria is a failed state. Recently, the federal government of Nigeria, through the Pharmacist Council of Nigeria, PCN, an agency in charge of regulating the practice of pharmacy in Nigeria, banned the operation of open drug markets in Nigeria. Another fallacy. Nigeria is a failed state.